Today is the second Sunday of Advent. That means there's 2 more Sundays before Christmas. And Advent is that time that encompasses the 4 Sundays before Christmas. It's that way every year. It's always the 4 Sundays before Christmas. Western Christianity has its own calendar. It's called the liturgical calendar, and it has various seasons. We talked last week about how Advent, the first Sunday of Advent, is the first Sunday of the new year in the liturgical calendar, and the first season of the new year is the season of Advent. Now, although we think of season as spring, summer, fall, and winter, season technically is just a period of time that recurs. So the Christmas season comes after the Advent season. Then after that is the season of Epiphany. Then there are other seasons that occur later on, like Lent, Easter, and Pentecost. Every year that Christian calendar repeats itself just like in a circle. The seasons in that year commemorate the major events of the life, death, resurrection, and return of Jesus. In essence, the liturgical calendar retells the entire account of Jesus over every year. And we have that every year. We have Advent every year, Christmas every year, Pentecost every year, Lent every year. It's a big circle, and it keeps going around and around and around every year. That is a reflection of the way ancient people viewed time. Ancient people viewed time as a circle. The lives of ancient people were lived outside. Most people's lives today are lived inside. In the ancient world, people were more attuned to what went on outside. They were a part of the natural world, and they paid attention to it. They looked at night and day. The sun rises, it moves across the sky, it sets. The next morning it rises again. That's a pattern, a circle that repeats itself every day. They saw the various phases of the moon. The moon is full, then it diminishes down. Then it becomes a full moon again. And that happens over and over and over with regularity. It's like a circle. People notice we have spring, then summer, then fall, then winter. And that happens every year in a predictable cycle. It's a big circle. People looked up in the sky and saw the various constellations of the stars. And they saw those move and repeat themselves in regular patterns, a circle. They saw the leaves come off the trees in the fall and come back on in the spring. And it did that every year. It was a big circle. They saw how the grass died down in the wintertime. It became brown. And it came back in the spring. And it did that every year. It was a big circle every year. And so ancient people, just by looking at what was going on around them, recognized that the world operates in regular cycles. It's like it goes around in a circle over and over again. And that's how they came to view time. Time to them flowed in a circle. They saw time as a circle going around and around and around. And that was really a reasonable view for them because, after all, that's the way everything in nature works. Now, a long time ago, we talked in here about the concept of ages in the Bible. That's not ages like in how old you are. In this context, age is a certain defined period of time when things are a certain way. Now there are hundreds of occurrences of that in the Bible. We generally never see them though, because in most English translations, those words are translated as something like forever or eternal or everlasting or something like that. But they're actually phrases that are through the ages, for ages and ages. It's only because of English translation we do not see that. Now, the concept of ages is something that Western Christianity has not ever concentrated on, and it has basically ignored. The way Western Christianity looks at things, the world was created, then it runs, and then at the end of time, Jesus will return, at which time the world is recreated, and then that's the end. That is a linear view of time, where it runs in a straight line like that. And that's the concept of time and the concept of things that Western Christianity adopted. But you can make a biblical case for looking at things in terms of a cycle, in terms of ages. The concept of ages views things as a cycle of one age after another. God brings things into being, things exist, then things either fall apart or are destroyed, then things lie fallow. That's the concept of the Sabbath. Then God brings things into existence again. Things exist, they decay or destroy, and then everything lies fallow. And then God brings it into existence again. And this can happen many, many times, innumerable times. Each one is called an age. They follow one another in a cycle, in a big circle that repeats itself. One age begins and runs its course. The next age begins and runs its course. The next age. A long time ago, we looked at the account of creation in the Bible, and we looked at it in the aspect of how you see Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, as the beginning of everything. And then there be a certain indeterminable but long period of time between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. And Genesis 1:2 is the beginning of this age. Genesis 1:1 was the beginning of everything. Period of time. Genesis 1:2, the beginning of this age. The rest of the Bible concerns itself with this age. The Bible refers to this as the last age, the last time at which the cycle of ages will end. And that's the cyclical view of time, where all of history is seen as one age after another. This is the final age at which the plan of the ages, the Apostle Paul talks about the plan of the ages being accomplished in Jesus, and so there is no more need for ages anymore. This is then the last times. We live in the last times. The Christmas song, "It Came Upon a Midnight Clear," contains this concept of circular time and the concept of ages, although most people don't recognize it. One of the verses goes, "For lo, the days are hastening on, by prophet bards foretold, when with the ever-circling years comes round the age of gold. When peace shall over all the earth its ancient splendors fling, and the whole world get back the song which now the angels sing." Notice the ever-circling years, and it comes up to the age of gold, the final age. Now that's one way of viewing time. That's the way ancients viewed it, and you can make a case that that's the way the Bible views it. Today we have a different view of time. Though we view time as linear, like going down a road. It goes off into the future rather than circling back around. Calendars that number the years like we do today. Like this is 2025 and it'll be 2026. Those are a relatively recent invention. The numbering system that we use today, that we're in the year 2025, dates from the 500s. That's when it was invented. Now, various numbering systems were in use before then, but in the very ancient past, there was no numbering system of years because there was no sense that time moved flat. It was a sense of time moving in a circle. So we're in 2025, soon it will change to 2026, then it will be 2027, then it will be 2028. You can see that light going down the road. You go down the road, if you're going to Chapel Hill, you go up there to 40, and you go on 40 or Hickory. Then you go to Newton Conover, then you go down to Winston-Salem, then you go down to Greensburg, and you keep on going. It's just like 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028. It will never come again. It's like walking down that road. You're gone again. When it's over, when 2025 is over, it'll never be again. It's like walking down a road and it's gone. Now there is disagreement about when exactly people changed from thinking of it in a cycle and on a straight line, but most indications are that it changed somewhere around the Renaissance. Now of course you could get into an argument from a scientific point of view as to which one of these is right. That wouldn't get you anywhere. What I wanted to do was consider a couple of things that we lost when we changed from seeing time as a circle to a straight line. Now last week we talked about the fact that Christmas almost exactly coincides with the winter solstice. The winter solstice is the shortest day of the year when there's the least amount of daylight. And this also is an example of how things run in cycles. You know, before the winter solstice in the fall, the days are getting shorter, and they keep getting shorter. Keeps getting dark earlier at night and getting dark later in the morning. Then after the winter solstice, that changes. The days will start getting a little longer. It'll start getting light a little early in the morning. And then it goes to something called the spring equinox. The amount of light and darkness equal that day. And the amount of light continues to increase until the summer solstice. And then it starts to decrease. At the fall equinox, the amount of light and darkness are the same. Then it decreases until the winter solstice, when the amount of light in day is the least. Ancient people saw this winter solstice when the days started to lengthen as a promise of rebirth. You would have to go through some hard months of winter to get the spring. But with the daylight increasing a little bit every day, you know that would be temporary. That spring was already on the horizon because you could see it was getting dark later and later every day. And then you came to spring. Where is the resurrection of Jesus? It is in spring. The crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus take place in spring. It's the time when trees begin to bud, plants begin to grow again, the weather warms up, the birds come back and they're singing. It symbolizes new life. And there's a song that reflects this. Praise the Lord, who has brought us a new life, who has ruled that the world be reborn, who has banished the dark with his goodness and transfigured the gloom to a glorious morn. Every year with the dawning of springtime comes the Lord with a message of hope evermore, and the world is reborn. You see, if we look at everything in linear time, we miss the wonder of springtime. We miss that message of hope evermore. Because you see, in the dark months of winter, as the days start lengthening, we have that hope, and we're looking forward to spring coming around. this way. And so we know we're going around rather than straight. Another thing that we might miss is the importance of the idea of the winter solstice itself. And think about what happens in winter. The trees lose their leaves, the bushes quit growing, the grass dies down, things rest. Things rest in winter. They take a break. Hens slow down laying eggs. It might be interesting to know that hens, egg production depends on whether the amount of daylight is increasing or decreasing. When the amount of daylight starts increasing in the day, it's when hens ramp up their egg production. And in the summertime, when the amount of daylight starts shortening in the day, hens taper off their egg production. Assume you put in a greenhouse in your backyard and you want to have some tomatoes in December. Tomato plants started when the light is decreasing will do worse than tomato plants started when the light is increasing. My father-in-law used to say that you had to get your tomato plants out no later than the last week of June, because if you tried to put them out in July, even though there might be enough warm weather left, they wouldn't do good. That's because there's a tendency in the natural world for things to slow down as the light in the day decreases. You know, when you first start having to mow your grass in the spring, it's like it grows 10 inches a week, and by the end of the year, it's barely growing at all. And so there's a tendency in the natural world for things to rest in the wintertime. Life on Earth is less active in winter. And winter represents, in a sense, a Sabbath rest. A time to slow down. A time to step back. A time of introspection. A time to reorder ourselves. A time to take a break. Make mental preparations for the next year that will follow. It can be a time to just enjoy the coziness of being warm with the heat on when it's cold and dark and rainy outside. In the ancient world, wintertime was seen as a time when the sun itself was resting, when it was strengthening itself for the activity to come in the spring and summer. And so winter can be seen as a time of strengthening. A time of letting go of things in the past that you need to let go of, because after all, things are changing. Something new will be here in spring. The cycle of time is beginning again. Everything is going to be renewed in spring. And we ourselves can be renewed also. That's why the winter solstice was important to people in the ancient world. We really don't know what all they did around there, but we know that ruins exist from ancient civilizations in Europe, Africa, Asia, and both of the American continents. They exist throughout the world. We do not know what they were used for. There are even some that are constructed to where the sunrise is exactly hits a certain point on the wall on the winter solstice. It's a mystic. Which is mystified. We get a clue, though, what it signifies for at least some people from the word solstice itself. It comes from the roots of the Latin words. It means the sun is stagnating. And the idea was that on the winter solstice, the sun stood still. And after that, it began to strengthen. The sun was weakening, then it stood still, and now it began strengthening. And so there's a sense that winter is a time to stand still, to pause, and start in another direction. That's actually where the idea of New Year's resolutions came from. The sun standing still and then changing from weakening to strengthening was seen as a metaphor for people in their lives to use the new energy coming into the new year in order to go a new direction with New Year's resolutions. There's also something else that's not quite as comforting about the winter solstice. You've still got to make it through those hard months of winter. And I was thinking about that the other day, and I thought, gosh, I hope we don't have an ice storm this year, and all, all that stuff, and it snows, have to put the tarps out on the ramp and everything. But Lord, I hope we don't have any of that. So we've got to make it through the hard months of winter, and in the ancient world it was a lot worse than it is today. You had to hunker down and conserve and really be careful. It was a dangerous time. You had to be careful. And so that's the same thing that we talked about last week, with Jesus, take up your cross and follow me. The path to victory lies through the cross, and the path to spring lies through the winter. The path to happiness lies through the troubles. But you have the energy to get through the other side, because if you look at things in a circle, the other side will always come. And a lot of people get depressed and they get so down and out because they're looking at things in a straight line. But if you look at things in a circle, it's a lot harder to get depressed and upset about things, because this too shall pass. Things will, it might be night today, but the sun will rise. It may be winter today, but spring is not far ahead. The leaves may be falling off the trees today, but they'll come back next spring. And so you see how looking at time as a circle can make your entire life look so different.